XCPinata in the house. I'm incredibly excited for this conversation. As I say, for most shows, I'm such a big fan of history, and this 24-piece collection on Counterparty is some of the earliest token creations that have ever been created. And there's a lot of debate surrounding everything within the collection. The history is definitely there, but I had to bring the creator here so that we could dive over his incredible story. And on the website, which we're going to cover here in a second, there's a lot of prefix that goes into how XCPinata was created. So thank you for joining me, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jake. I appreciate you putting this together and being able to speak to you about the project and just give a little bit of the history and kind of dive into it with you.
Yeah, quite the history. First and foremost, you set up at Bitcoin Miami, where we know the Bitcoin maxis are not a big fan of Counterparty or even a lot of the stuff that's built on it. Tell us about your experience, because you also got to share the story on stage of XCPinata and kind of spread more knowledge around Counterparty. So just tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so this was my first real big conference. I've done some tech conferences in New York in the past. But this is the first real big Bitcoin one that I've been invited to that I went to. It was really exciting. It was great to put faces to the artwork that I've seen from a lot of great artists and just kind of have that face-to-face talk and build that camaraderie within the community. So it was a great time for sure.
Did you get any pushback, or was there any resistance from some of the attendees there, or was it more open and accepting and a lot of interest surrounding your work and some of the NFTs on Counterparty?
Yeah, well, face to face, it was all good. You know, it's hard to say what people may say behind your back or what they might not think or they don't say. But no, talking to people, they all seemed accepting, and I got a lot of great feedback. People seem to really dig the project. They seem to get it really quickly when I kind of go over the concepts, especially of the token is the art, and just kind of explain what my process has been. They seem to enjoy it and just kind of appreciate it for what it is, just like I do.
Is there anywhere online that they can find your presentation, or are you still trying to figure that out?
Yeah, that'll be accessible. I just left from Miami to go on a family holiday. So once I get back to it, I'll probably put that up online. I know there's some recordings. I have my community manager who can't be here right now, Oliver Morris. He's a great guy. He's from the Rare Pepe community. He has done some recordings for that for me. So we'll hopefully get those out and live so people can take a look and kind of go over it.
And I'm glad that you brought up Rare Pepes. Rare Pepes were created in 2016. Your project actually predates Rare Pepes, which is kind of a cool anointment to the project, because it's around the same time as Spells of Genesis and the very, very early projects on there.
Right. And I would say that the project itself was assembled in 2021, but the tokens were issued before Pepe. So they weren't put together in the XCPinata project until this past year. So in that sense, then the Rare Pepes would be earlier as far as a project, but the token date, which is important to me, the mint date, preceded Rare Pepes at least a few good months. I know they're 2016, mine are 2015.
I'm glad you make that distinction, because there is a lot of heated debate within the Counterparty and the NFT community of when the image is minted. What was the intention? Was it actually a collection? Was it spread apart? So we'll cover the 2021 aspect of it here in a second. But in terms of your experimentation on Counterparty, were you in crypto before you started dabbling into some of the art sides of Counterparty, or was this your first introduction to crypto?
So I heard about Bitcoin maybe 2013, and I didn't think much of it. When I first heard about it, I thought the government would shut it down and it would just die. I'm like, oh, that's not going to last, right? Like, kind of the same thoughts that a lot of people have when they first hear about it. But then I did my research and kind of looked into it. And I mean, later on, I really believed it in Bitcoin once we saw that the government was actually having sales for the Bitcoin that they confiscated. So that kind of added a legitimacy for me to feel comfortable with that as an investment. But as far as the art goes, 2014 is when I really started thinking about blockchain, how this could be incorporated with my art. I work with digital art before this, and I was trying to figure out a way to combine blockchain and fine art. I was actually going to art school at the time, and we were talking about individual identity, and we were just going over different things like that, while I was also trying to figure out how to combine my digital work and create digital originals. So there you go. In 2009 is actually even earlier than that. Is when I was really trying to figure out a way to create unique works of art around these digital images. The big problem was, right, was what you hear a lot of now, right? Right click, copy, save, right? So anybody could take your file and make a copy of it, and it wasn't original. My solution to that at the time, before I heard about blockchain, was to make prints, right? One of one prints. So that's what I was doing. I was making these giant prints, somewhere like 5 feet, and doing shows. I did an exhibit called Spectrumech, a pataphysical gestation to the birth of little T, which is really centered around kind of like chaos and organization, and those two concepts clashing. But back to the digital work, I was really trying to figure out a way to make original. You're kind of skipping ahead here, getting to digital originals. But what you just showed on screen, we can talk about that now. Those are the 2011 pandas. So what I did was I created digital images. They were vector files, and I found a service that let me cryptographically hash each file. And in order to get the time provenance, which blockchain now provides, which I didn't have at the time, is I would send these through email. So if you send through email, you would get that timestamp. And then the cryptographic hash would hash the file, so that way you would know it was a unique file. So that was my first attempt. And I actually, what I kind of think is funny about it is I put traits on the pandas, and I don't know if you could see in that image there, but I had like the panda's name and their height and their personality, right? So I had like these little traits for each one, which really kind of, I thought was enjoyable to see where PFPs have gone now with the whole traits, and you got your Bored Apes and your CryptoPunks. But it was funny to see that this type of thinking has been around not only myself, but others, I'm sure. So it's kind of...
Yeah, you're the literally early PFP experimentation without even knowing that. Right. And it's funny because the idea of PFPs, even Larva Labs has shown that they didn't intentionally create CryptoPunks to be PFPs. That kind of was like created and crafted from the community itself.
Sure.
Going back,
weren't supposed to be PFPs. Obviously, I really love characters, so I was just like, I want people to enjoy these characters like I do. So let's make characters and share them.
Is there anywhere that we can find the original art that you were talking about before, the stuff that predates these little cute pandas?
Oh, the Spectrumech stuff? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a site with them on it. It's not available to the public at this moment, but I'll probably get that up there as my story kind of develops and I kind of share it more. I'll probably add some links to that stuff as well if people seem interested in seeing it. But that was around, I think there's around 20 to 30 pieces in that whole exhibit. And I took it places like New York and Connecticut and just, I'm from New England. So that was kind of my area, Boston, and just went around and did shows with those works. So
are these pandas all hand-drawn?
Well, yeah, they're hand-drawn, but on a digital program. So I used what was called Adobe Flash at the time. Now that's Adobe Animate, but that's what I used for a lot of my work. Was Adobe products. So I've been using, I think Adobe Premiere was my first one back in 1998. So.
Right. So here in this, the 2009 to 2012 digital originals, from the pandas and showing is that you were trying to find ways to essentially put them in some sort of storage system, right? It says that it was recorded via email instead of the blockchain. Were you trying to attempt to find some sort of like provenance to store them? Is that what the idea was?
Yeah, the idea was to get a provenance, so that way somebody that held these pandas would know that they're unique and for them only. My original idea was to do copyrights, right? But copywriting is kind of cost prohibitive. At least it was for me, especially at the time. So in order to get around that, a cryptographic hash would kind of be an ideal solution.
Right. And this copyright blur is this part of your work too?
That is. So that was another thing I was working with is really kind of like a Creative Commons, right? Like where is the line drawn between somebody's work and licensing and copyright, and how do we even say like whose work it is, when, especially if it's kind of a mix of the two, a blend. So this was me kind of playing with that, like where do we draw that line where it becomes like legally you own that versus this being a new work of art. And to me, I really think that copyright is kind of an outdated model for really securing creations for artists. And I'm kind of along the lines of we never create alone, right? We think that we're like these separate kind of human, separate species, but we're not. Everything's kind of integrated and tangled together. So like, for example, Walt Disney, he drew Mickey Mouse when he was on a train, right? But like what in that environment and what affected thoughts before he even got on the train that really contributed to help him create that character, right? So it's not just his own thinking, even though it kind of manifested right in him and he created it, sure. But I think along the lines that there was thousands of things that kind of moments that kind of came together to really produce that form. So I think that saying like, oh, I own this is me, this is my copyright, it's kind of selfish in a way, not to be able to share that with everybody. But I think that we should be able to use any of the work that's been created before us and kind of share alike is really the idea behind this piece for sure.
All right. And for those that are listening, this piece is from Thursday, November 11th, 2010. Very, very early in the crypto world and even kind of digital art, essentially. I know a lot of the digital art programs back then were also very primitive. And maybe that's why part of the reason why you decided to go with some of the pixelated art on the newer tokens, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Sure. And then on this timeline that's on your website, we move into 2013, the AR exhibit. It says you created one of the first augmented reality exhibits in a gallery setting using my digital art. It was then turned into physical sculptures and prints. The prints come alive in AR using digital animated sculptures. And then there's an article. So this is the prefix before going into Counterparty. Can you share a little bit on this?
Sure. So this is I'm really big on trying to stay at the forefront of tech, and I think that's kind of what makes my art unique. Is I'm really at the intersection of fine art or art and technology, which is kind of how I found blockchain. Right, I'm looking for like what's new, what are people using that could be exciting and kind of join the art world. And you see that a lot through history. I think is you see a lot of artists are kind of the first to try out new technologies and new ways, and that's one of the things I do is take technology and try to think of a new use case for it, some way to use it that hasn't been done before. And that's what I was doing here with augmented reality. I used software that was already developed. I'm not a developer myself. I can do a little bit of developing, but I would never call myself a developer. I'm an artist first and foremost. So I use tools that have already been created by the wonderful developers. So I took my works, and here you can see that piece in the image is one of the pieces from SpectrumX, which is called Lighthouse. And you would create a trigger image, so that way the image would come alive. And on here I have an animated eagle that would fly around it when you trigger the image using the AR application on the phone. So we had Verizon come and sponsor it, and they gave phones so people in the gallery could come and look at the works, and the prints would basically come alive with different animations, things that I had created for that exhibit.
Right. Yeah. This article is pretty. So it's Art Center Show Combines Technology Origami from April 11th, 2013. Some of this has been redacted, obviously to keep some privacy. So it says Blank uses a smartphone app to allow a flying eagle to be seen against artwork on canvas at the Paper to Pixels exhibit opening April 7th at blah, blah, blah. And then it goes on to just talk a little bit about the experience. As you mentioned that this was one of the first kind of AR galleries, did it feel like you were on the forefront of art and technology and creation?
It did, and I worked alongside a lot of other artists, like Balam Soto was in this, and he's really kind of at the forefront. He's got some really cool work I would recommend checking out. But it really did. When people came to the gallery, they were really interested to see, like, what is this? Like, how does this work? And it's great to show people and kind of explain how the process works and really help inspire them. I think a lot of the shows I do, the thing that kind of brings me the most joy is the inspiration that it gives to people, and I see a lot of potential in that. I'll even go later. I've seen some artists come to my show and then see their work change or kind of exhibit different attributes that clearly came from my work, which is great to see. I love sharing, like I said, and seeing people come and do that and find joy in it like I do. It is just a blessing.
I could hear it being echoed just through your verbiage and excitement through this conversation. It's truly cool. And then on the timeline for those that are listening, 2015, the XCP tokenization says, during this time I was creating and studying fine art and realized that blockchain would enable the tokenization of everything, which I do agree on. And that narrative actually seems to be highly popularized now in today's world because of NFTs. So you did incredible foresight again. I could finally have the digital originals if I could figure out how to get the image file on chain. Proof of me contacting Bitcoin Megaphone creator, trying to get art of on-chain here, which I'll display in a second. And I posted about the tokenization here. Counterparty enabled the creation of tokenized assets. So I started to create tokens that represented items, art, IP, people, and more. And that's how we ended up with the 24 pieces of the XCP collection, which, as you mentioned, was then curated specifically into this project. But in here, it shows that you were experimenting off of kind of individual ideas at the time. To dissect it at the start, you realize that this would tokenize everything, but then you mentioned a few sentences later that you were trying to still figure out how to get the image and file on chain, but then you still continue to experiment it while trying to seek out how to make that happen. So what in those early stages first, I guess, captured your attention? And then why did you decide to continue to do this even though there was issues of trying to figure out how to put the image and file on chain?
Sure. So what captured my attention really is using this tech, right? Like I was clearly able to understand that this is something special and that this is going to change how we operate in a lot of ways. We had a lot of conversations back then on the application called ZapChain, which is a great platform. I'm kind of sad that it went away, but basically people talking about Bitcoin and different applications of blockchain, and you were able to tip each other in Satoshis as you came up with ideas and work together. A lot of the people at the forefront of the tech were on there at the time. So it was really kind of stimulating conversations, which I enjoyed. We talked a lot about the tokenization of everything, right? From health to art. And it's not just art is really just the beginning. What you see here with NFTs, you're going to see any asset. Like I say this all the time to people when I talk to them, is that every single company in the world can use NFTs and digital assets, because you can digitize anything from a stapler to your phone, right? And with AR, and if you combine AR with these digitized assets, not only can you digitize the assets, have that unique property on your bottom line, right, for your company, but you can also monetize it if you have AR. So then people can put an ad on the stapler that you have digitized that says, I don't know, CVS or whoever wants to pay for the space on all the staplers in the world, or all the staplers in just your company. So there's a lot of ways that these digital assets are really going to bolster companies' bottom line, and give them that, give you liquidity within items that you never would think could be. So people will probably take digital assets and wrap them. You like for, let's use the stapler for an example. You could say you're a staple company, or your staples, you want to put your ad on all the staplers that are within we'll call it the metaverse, right? And you can put them out there in the world, and every time somebody picks up a staple in their AR working environment, they'll see your ad. So, and that's just, I don't know, not the full brand of use cases, but just one that I can think of specifically that's kind of really clear in my mind, and not very far away at this time. So,
were those the exact ideas that you were thinking of 7 years ago in 2015, or and also some of the community that you were communicating with, like in this email that shows you contacted the creator of Bitcoin Megaphone, which I would assume is probably a creation on Counterparty. This is from August 12th, 2014. And it says, do you have any plans to allow images on Bitcoin Megaphone? Or maybe that is a site. And then he goes on to talk about the issues with trying to store images on chain right now.
Sure. So getting an image on chain is complicated, right? It's, for an artist, it's very cost prohibitive. Like, you could do it, right? You could translate your image into the code that's needed, but it's so large, even for a small file, that it becomes really cost prohibitive to do that. Even NFTs today, it's still a large issue. Like, I only know a very few handful of projects, even on the Ethereum network, where you have like maybe On-Chain Monkey is the only one that I could think of offhand that has the image actually on chain. So getting that image on chain is expensive, and it would take a lot of transactions to have happen. People are obviously, developers are trying to come up with a solution to this. I have not seen a very good one yet, but what this does is anybody can change the image, right? So as an artist, I could go back and change how the image looks if I want to. It's not immutable like the token is. And that's kind of where I get to the token is the art, because that's the immutable part. That's the part that's not going to change. And that's the part that I feel represents my work, because as we go through in time, say I die and, I don't know, my predecessors or their family have access to the tokens, they could go and make adjustments to the image if they wanted to, but the token will always remain. So for me, that's the temple, right? That's the part that's immutable, and just anything else that you add on is kind of like, I don't know, putting a poster up in a temple, putting up an ad almost. So that's why with the XCPinata project, I have these great 8-bit images. I love 8-bit because I grew up in the 80s, and if you didn't play Nintendo, you didn't know what you were doing. So I just love that style, and use that as kind of my way to advertise to the world these tokens, and use those images to bring people in and give a visualization for what they are.
Right. And we see the token as the art echoed throughout the entire Counterparty community. Rare Pepes, Spells of Genesis, Saratobi. A lot of these people have mentioned that because of the off-chain image storage. It's funny looking at this from 2014, where Mike Solomon responds and he says, the images would be a great idea, but it's logistically challenging, especially when you factor not safe for work content and copyright claims. The main challenge is that I never want to have to edit or delete a post on site, which would go against the overall concept of anonymity. By the way, you can create a hyperlink to an image gallery as long as you start with the URL. So basically what is intact now of storing things on chain and some of the more not safe for work content that we see in the NFT space has obviously come into the mainstream. But back then it was a main concern for Mike and probably some other people in the community.
Right. So you're going to have, the only way to really get around that is to have a centralized authority, right? Like OpenSea, that kind of like tells you what can be seen or can't. But that doesn't stop it from living there on chain. Like, you could always access it if you really wanted to.
Is there any reason why you didn't go ahead and store a hyperlink to an image gallery? Was there, or was it just something that you didn't think was feasible for your specific project?
At the time, I wasn't aware of how to create the JSON file that was needed in order to get the image up. But also because of the way that it wasn't immutable like the token was, it didn't seem as necessary to kind of get up there at the time.
Yeah, it makes sense. Back then, it's impossible to really know everything. And then on to the next part, 2016 to 2018, blockchain and secured editions. I created what I call the blockchain secured edition, selling editions of the artwork using ascribe.io, and then shows proof. Can you define what blockchain secured editions is and the philosophy behind going down this route?
Yeah, so with this, I was trying to sell editions. I went from digital originals to blockchain secured editions because they were secured by the blockchain, right? We had that time provenance finally. So that's what I was calling it. So I used Ascribe, very much like you would OpenSea, where once it was running, you go on there, upload your image, and you can create however many of those NFTs that you wanted. And then I went and sold them. At the time, for the ones that I sold, I was using Arc. I don't know if you are aware of this company, Arc Ecosystem, Arc.io. It's an
altcoin, correct?
Yeah, yep. So I was using Arc for payment. So you would pay me a certain amount of Arc on the Arc chain that would come into my wallet, and I would issue you an edition that I had created. And they were, I mean, at the time they were going for like 2 Arc. I think it was, which is not much.
That's like pennies.
Yeah. So it's funny to see the kind of where the art pricing where it was and how it's kind of come to the forefront of where it's at now. So it's interesting to see the differences for sure.
So Ascribe was for Bitcoin assets specifically?
Yeah, I believe Ascribe used the Bitcoin blockchain to issue their assets. And I love Bitcoin, and that's where I created my counterparty assets, and it's still where I create to this day. I have not gone over to Ethereum to create any assets, but I wouldn't call myself a maximalist where I feel like I need to stay on one chain. I guess in today's terms, I'd be chain agnostic. I'm an artist. For me, it's like pen or pencil, right? Like they both have great qualities that could be used in a number of different ways. And if one of my projects calls for another chain versus another, I don't see why limit myself, really.
Okay, I have to ask this question, whether there's an answer or not, because the NFT historians who are listening, some of them might see these secured editions as having some sort of historical value. Were these minted into the blockchain, and do you know where they could be found, if so?
Yeah, so those were done on a Scribe, and from my understanding, because I reached out to Trent and to Adam McBride, actually, he helped give me some info on this. He said that the Ascribe library of images has been, they didn't hold on to that. That's been deleted or gone or whatever, but they do have access to the back end, and they're trying to get that back end back up. If that were to happen, if that back end were to come back up, I do hold the image files still that would correlate with those. So then we could actually theoretically revive them and kind of sell them or give them to collectors in some form. But I haven't heard anything other than that they were trying to. That'd be great. I do have some pieces on there that would be fun to at least see for myself.
Yeah, the revival and uncovering of some of these assets from these different chains and different backend systems is quite unique. I had on Lil Shibe and Bitcoin Beggar from Doge Party, and they have a similar issue with CoinDaddy, who stores most of the back end information. And specifically for like Bitcoin Beggar, he says that the JSON file was minted within the first few days of token creation, but there's no way for him to pull the data because CoinDaddy holds that backend. So there's this like also back and forth of like, please give us information. There's a lot of value here. Idea. It's interesting how there was no foolproof process like you see now with most of the modern ETH NFTs.
Sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of what was going on back then too, especially was experimentation, right? People were trying this new technology and trying to figure it out and trying to put these things together. I think CoinDaddy is a great service. I've used them for years to put information on chain for counterparty assets. So shout out to them for sure.
Did you back then? Did you look into Doge Party at all? Were you aware of the project?
I was aware of Dogecoin, but I don't think I knew about Doge Party. So I did not get involved with it. I really liked. I mean, once I used Counterparty, I was kind of set with that. So.
Okay, yeah. and now moving into the bulk of this, which is now the 21 edition, which you still have the 2015 tokens, which I believe were all minted in 2015. There's one actually, Pinata says that's minted in 2021. Yeah.
All of them, all 24 were minted in 2015, except for Pinata, which was minted in 2021. That the Pinata asset was used for the first airdrop as a verification asset. So everybody that participated, I sent out the Pinata asset, and upon when it was time to do the airdrop, anybody that held a Pinata, I was able to disperse the assets to them.
Right, and you've added a pretty interesting fold with the airdrops, but what's on the screen is you have all of the different assets names. There's like Black Dog, Brownie, Cookie, Sandwich, Rhino, Yarn. So just pretty much just like a random objects for the most part, but it still points to the idea that you were trying to tokenize things that represented our IP and kind of these different ideals. And then you go on, and I'm glad that you type in like the intent and what each thing is supposed to be used for, right? Each token is good for one cheesecake. So is the idea like you're going to send people cheesecake if they owned it?
Yeah. So the idea came from the whole tokenization. Everything's going to be tokenized, right? So like I was trying to think like, what can I tokenize and how would that be used? And I just noted it on chain for some of them. And I went through the assets to just try to remember what it was I was thinking of. And a lot of them I noted on chain, right? Like for the cheesecake, each token is good for one cheesecake, which meant that basically it'd be like redeemable, right? Like you'd have the token and you could redeem it for a cheesecake. And it was a way, it was really kind of like coupons or currency. It was kind of a in between, right? Trying to think of different ways that it could be used for those items and for the tokenization of those assets, which I guess in this terms are the asset would be, I don't know, cupcakes, cookies, brownies, you name it.
Man, I hope you were sending me little goodies. Were you familiar or were you in communication with the creator of Umbrella? Because I know his token Umbrella was meant to send out umbrellas, but for him there's actual provenance from different forums saying the intention behind it. But it seems like there was a handful of people in the community who were kind of circling around these like redeemable counterparty tokens.
Yeah, I think a lot of people at the time that were issuing these assets were thinking along those lines, and you could see it on chain where people know what it was for. And I think Umbrella is a great example of that, and they do have some great information on that project. I'm not aware of the creator. I think I may have talked to him in chat a few times, but that's definitely an interesting project, and I'm a fan of Umbrella.
Right. Sure. So here's the art. Most of these have 10 supply up to 300. Let's cover the supply distribution first. Was there any intention behind having some of these assets have an edition size of 100? I know some of these are down to like 20, like Movie Ticket, or was it more just random experimentation?
So I really like small editions, coming kind of from the fine art world. I really and as a collector myself, right, I've been collecting, I don't know, baseball cards, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cards since I was a kid. So the idea of like something being rare and having kind of an edition of 10 versus one that has 300 that might be able to bring people into the project or as collectors versus a smaller one that's kind of your rare, right? Like, I think I played Magic the Gathering and everybody wanted the Black Lotus, right? Because that's like the rarest card you could get. So I like small editions, and I didn't want to do any one of ones because I thought that would just make it like completely unobtainable, really, kind of. So I left some open that would have 300, and then kept the other ones really quite small. And I know some of them had started with like, I think cookies started with like 1,000, and I would do things like burn the cookies to kind of attract collectors to say, okay, like he's going to burn a bunch of these, but so they're worth looking into.
All right. Yeah, you see some of these are available. Dinosaur and Cupcake look to be either the most popular or they just happen to sell out because those ones say.
Yeah, those ones are the ones that have sold out from the ones that I was making available. The other ones, either they're not for sale or are still available. A lot of them I still want to do via the airdrops. So as you hold different assets, I'm going to airdrop these assets, these 2015 assets, as well as some contemporary works that I think of along the way.
All right. I like that. I like that you've been adding on the airdrop section for the art. As we mentioned a handful of times, the art was put onto the blockchain or wherever the storage is. But this happened in 2021, correct? First, did you design and create this art, the pixel art? And then where are the images stored now in 2022?
Yes, so I created all these images. I'm an artist first and foremost. I would kind of like go against my soul, let somebody else do the artwork. So I created the artwork. I uploaded them to IPFS, which is a decentralized storage system, and then created a JSON file, attached it, and then you broadcast that with your asset, and you'll get the image to show up in X chain.
Yep. What was the inspiration behind pixel art? Obviously, CryptoPunks are pixel art, Mooncats are pixel art. Some of the early stuff is pixel art. I knew that I wanted that kind of retro feel because I really, like I said, I grew up in the 80s, so I love pixel art. And I didn't want the focus to be like, I didn't want to do these grand oil paintings, right? Like where like, oh, here's a soda, and just do like the painting. And I thought that keeping the art simple would put the focus more on the token, which is for me, the token is the art, and that's kind of the point of the project. Exactly. So now moving over to airdrops. Your next airdrop is in 14 days.
Yeah, look at that.
Congratulations on that. I'm going to go to the very beginning of the first airdrop that looked like it was November 20th. All you had to do is hold 3 out of 5. And then what was airdropped after the first one?
So I'd have to look at the chain, but I know that I airdropped a lot of assets. Maybe I think at least 3 or 4 assets for everybody that had held it, including the Pinata one, which I used for verification for this first one.
Okay, yeah. If we look at the one above, the additions are Chariot, Black Dog, and the ice cream one.
Right. So the next airdrop was similar. You just needed to hold 3 assets. I just increased the assets that could be held. And I think that's what I did for the first 3 airdrops. You'll see that the assets that you need to hold, it kind of increases. But you'll be able to get that airdrop if you do hold them.
Right. What better way to encourage participation than to financially incentivize people? Although the price of some of these assets are still, I guess you could call them discovery mode of some sort. And then you introduce something that's called Progeny and Beasts. What is that?
So that was my idea for kind of taking these assets and kind of bolstering what could be done with them, right? Like what can happen in the future. And as an artist, I'm going to continue to make work, and whoever holds my XCPinata assets, I'm going to reward them with that work, right? Like, so if you have one of my tokens from XCPinata, theoretically throughout my life, I'll be able to issue art from that. So it's kind of like become a collector now, and you're a collector forever, and you get rewarded with that. With the Progeny and Beasts, I wanted to, again, I'm experimenting all the time, right? I wanted to work with the broadcast messaging system that is allowed on Counterparty. I noticed that a lot of the broadcasting messages were just random, or it wasn't being used very much. So what I did was I made it so that if you held a Progeny NFT with one of the XCPinata animal assets and you broadcasted the specific message, you would receive a special Beast NFT, which is it's actually still ongoing. If you go and broadcast it, you hold those two assets, you will receive one of the Beast NFTs. And I'm just going to keep this ongoing, and either until I decide to end it or until I run out of the assets of the Beasts. I think I have about maybe 50 to, I think there's 50 for each animal.
And the Beast NFTs are new additions, new mints?
Yeah, so those are completely new in token and in image. They're sub assets actually of the Pinata asset.
Oh, and then I also just pulled up the messaging instructions, because I also was like, wait, message? Do you want me to tweet it? But it's actually like broadcasting it through Counterparty on the blockchain.
Right. So I wanted people to kind of use Counterparty more, and because it's a great tool, right? And you can make these wonderful assets, and you can do so many cool things with it. And again, I'm thinking of a creative way to use the tools that I have available, and broadcasting messages to receive an NFT seemed like a really cool one that hadn't been done yet.
That really captures the early ethos of these token creators. Even with the early Bitcoin adopters, the faucets were really popular, of just like giving away Bitcoin just to further incentivize you to understand and participate within the network and the technology. So you're still keeping that intact. Shows that you're an OG. And here's some of the artwork, which looks pretty dope.
Yeah, those are the NFTs for the beasts: your dinosaur beast, your snake beast, rhino beast, black dog beast, teddy beast, and then you get a curse beast if you send out a submission. If you send out a broadcast that's incorrect, you're going to get a cursed beast. So I think I have maybe 2 that went out from people sending incorrect messages purposely to receive that asset.
That's fun. It actually might end up being more valuable if it's scarce over time. It's an interesting dynamic. But you're adding on some of the modern, I guess, say applications or modern trends, right? With like mutant apes and cursed skulls and all these new ones, Azuki beans, all these different things that are being intertwined within some of the historical properties.
Right. It's kind of just, for me, it's play, right? I really believe in relationships and play in my work, and just any way that I can increase the amount of play, it just makes it enjoyable for me to create, and for my collectors as well.
I pulled up the NFT Relics Explorer for XCPinata. Has all the assets listed. If anybody is unaware, NFT Relics Explorer is by far one of the best tools to have. It shows some of the sales history. It shows the top 3 holders. I would assume you're holding the majority of these tokens for the airdrops and for some other future utility that you plan on implementing.
Right. If you look at like Dinosaur and Cupcake, the amount that's held by the top holders will probably be lower, because those are all distributed. But the other ones that I hold are either going to be for airdrops or for sale whenever I put them up. And since there is a limited supply, they won't always be available. And I'm thinking of different ways to kind of go about increasing the distribution and trying to make it fair for all involved at the same time.
Right, because this is a common issue within historical NFTs, is that whenever the projects are revived, the original dev or one of the original holders owns the majority of the supply, and they kind of dump into any sort of momentum, which then kind of discourages any sort of participation because you're just going to get dumped on. But you just mentioned that the goal is actually to distribute all of it, or the high majority of it.
So I'm distributing. I only hold 2 of every asset. Which one of them is for my personal. I'm just going to hold it because it's my work and I'd like to have a copy of my work. And the other one is what I'm making available for galleries and museums, hopefully in the future. And that's another kind of aspect to the XCPinata project, is that I know some galleries and I'm talking with them and hopefully going to have them purchase some of the assets because they'll be able to receive more and more of my work if they hold it, and they can do with what they want with it. If they're a museum, they could display it. If they're a gallery, they could sell it if they wanted to. So
very, very novel. How come you haven't gone to experiment with Ethereum? You are chain agnostic. Do you still just hold some sort of nostalgia and pride within Counterparty?
Oh, of course. I mean, Counterparty is kind of close to my heart. It's where it all started for me, right? And it's where I still am, obviously. I haven't gone over to other chains because I'm working on distribution right now with these assets. So that's kind of my main focus. And really with kind of introducing these collections and talking to people, I don't really have time to go and run a whole nother project on Ethereum right now. But that's something that I'll think about. It could be a way to increase liquidity and distribution for collectors in the future. If I issue if I issue an Ethereum side project that has all blue XCPinata project assets, but I could do sub assets on Counterparty, so I really don't have a need to. I could issue cupcake.blue or dinosaur.blue and increase the size of those additions and make them available to kind of increase the amount of collectors we have coming to enjoy the work.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't even know that you could release sub assets to that, which is essentially the equivalent of like companion drops you see on ETH.
Yeah. So it's great because you can have, as long as you own the token name, you can issue a sub asset for it. So as long as I'm the owner, which I am of Dinosaur Cupcake, I can issue dinosaur.blue, cupcake.blue because I do own.
Wow, that creates a whole different dynamic. I noticed that you started issuing some sales on scarce.city, which is home to pretty much most of the XCP assets. Here you sold a complete collection, all 24 assets. It sold for 20.5 million sats, which was at the equivalent of about $8,000 at the time. What was the idea behind selling the entire collection on one auction, and will we see more of these in the future?
You won't. I don't think you'll see an entire collection go for sale again. That was kind of a rare one-off. It was something I was doing because I was at the Bitcoin 2022 conference and I was speaking and and I was exhibiting. So I wanted to kind of do a big collection sale. The buyer actually got a really good deal. The usually go for much more. So it was great to see for the collector, obviously. And I think it helps because now it's more distribution, right? So I'm getting them distributed, which is great for the collectors as well.
Man, I wish I would have seen this. I wish I would have looked at this. I would have definitely went in.
And I actually can't. I had one pinata asset that I was able to, because that's the only one that I only had one of, and that's going to go with this when they get sent over to the buyer. So,
wow, what was the reasoning behind using scarce.city? Just for those most people that are listening probably aren't familiar with the website.
Yeah. Scarce City I think they're a great team. Love the guys over there. They're running auctions of old assets, sometimes newer assets from quality artists. You'll see a lot of rare Pepe come up in there. They're big with that community, but they ran the auctions at the Bitcoin conference 2022. So it was great to work with them, and they really just kind of help get eyeballs on the work and spread the word, and they're great at what they do. And a big selling point for using them is they offer lightning payments, which means you can pay very quickly and kind of confirm your payment much faster than if they hadn't used that network.
Yeah, they're really putting themselves out in the open and kind of leading, or I guess they're helping commercialize counterparty assets, because it can be quite intimidating and quite confusing when you're going to counterparty. I remember when I first started buying rare puppies last year, it was like you have to check a dispenser, then you could check the decentralized exchange, then you can check Emblem Vault and all these properties. It's like there's like 10 different spots to find the right price.
Right. And I'll tell you, that was one of the biggest things I noticed at the Bitcoin conference with talking with people, is that, first of all, most of them didn't even know Bitcoin had NFTs, right? They're like, wait, Bitcoin has NFTs. It was kind of like explaining it, and it's really a process of education to people that would collect, right? They want to get involved, but then they don't know the process because they've never seen it and nobody's explained it to them. So a lot of what I was doing at the conference was kind of explaining how it worked, how you needed to go and get counterparty, which we use freewallet.io as the main desktop version because you get all the features with it. So downloading that and then being able to send your Bitcoin to a dispenser and receiving the asset back. Unless you're within the community, it's not common knowledge, right? So it's really kind of educating the collectors and making it available for them. And I'm looking at different ways of kind of easing that pain point, right? Because that's a real it's asking a lot of your collector to go and kind of figure that out versus just, hey, if you just buy it now, you have it. So, but it also is kind of rewarding too, right? Like when you do it a few times, I don't know if you've done it yourself much, but when you go and send out the Bitcoin and receive the asset, it's really cool having that asset come back to you and know that you did it correctly. And it's rewarding in it of itself, but not good for, kind of your average quick collector that just wants to pick up a piece and not have to worry too much.
Right. Yeah. The evolution is interesting. And I forgot to mention this in the very beginning when NFT started heating back up. At what point of this NFT reemergence, or you could say emergence, did you look back into all of the assets and begin to theorize and craft the idea of XCPinata? Or was it just something that you sat on for a long time and knew that NFTs, or I guess back then it's called tokens, would come into popularity?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the NFTs kind of taking off. At the time, I was working. I worked for an animation studio. We actually did the interactive exhibits over for NASA over at Kennedy Space Center for the Apollo 50th anniversary. So I was busy at work doing that stuff. But I heard about NFTs, and a lot of the companies that I work with, I actually pitched ideas on how to use these digital assets and how they could use them in their own projects or benefit with clients. Because after that, I worked with a digital ad agency who it would be perfect for their clientele. So I always knew about NFTs, and I saw that they were taking off, but I didn't think back much to the assets until I started receiving a lot of emails. And I was like, what is going on with this? And I didn't know NFT archaeology was a thing. And when I saw that, I was like, first of all, when I was a little kid, I always wanted to be an archaeologist, so when I saw that, I'm like, oh, this is a perfect name, NFT archaeologist, somebody that goes through and looks through the chains. Like, it instantly was like, this is great. So kind of got into that to see what was happening, and just decided, I'm going to take these assets that I hold and create this project that's fun for me and fun for my collectors as well. So
right, we all watched or grew up or knew somebody who was a treasure hunter, whether it's from the movies or your family. I actually owned an antique store, so that's kind of like how I found my foray into digital artifacts. But also now, what happens within the history?
I used to hunt for rocks. I would go and take rocks in my yard and catalog them. I had like all these rocks cataloged.
Really?
I was looking for fossils, and like I'd see like a little thing and be like, "Oh, that's a fossil." It was clearly not a fossil, but I was young, so I was like, "Yeah, it's a fish or a dinosaur."
Collecting is it's just ingrained into the human psychology. Humans have been collecting for literally the entire existence of humanity. It's quite interesting how now with NFTs, there's like this social capital component to it, and everyone can form around these tokens and have their own communities. But within the historical NFT space, I don't know if maybe you've probably experienced this, but there's a lot of debate around semantics and meaning and value.
It's all language, right? And language. The problem with language is that when you're trying to describe something, language can never fully describe what it is. It's not 100% truthful. So we're trying to come to a truth using language, which is ill-equipped for that. Like when you try to describe like a painting or an apple, you can say all these qualities about it and different attributes. But in order to describe the whole gestalt, I'll use a fine art word there, the whole gestalt of the apple or the painting within language, it just seems to fall short. So I think that's what we're seeing with these conversations, and I think it's really why it makes such fun debates, right?
Right. Yeah. And it can get pretty heated. I mean, I get in these debates a lot, but we're just trying to find meaning. So you find yourself in an interesting point. You created these digital assets very early, but now as tokens have morphed into NFTs, there's more meaning and there's more technical, or I guess you say technicals behind it, right? So you're maybe one of, I don't know, a few dozen artists who created these tokens with no images or in the original position of mint. But from your perspective, what's it been like trying to debate with the historical NFT community the idea and the intent of your tokens that may not fit their specific curriculum? Has it been tough trying to market this idea, or has everyone been more welcoming and accepting?
I think that obviously it's kind of depends on your opinion, right? It's subjective, and when something's subjective, there's no finality to what's the final say. But I think that the debates around the tokenizing art and about these assets and all the different terms is very, I think it's inspiring, and I think there's a lot to be said about. You're going to see like art classes taught about this stuff, and down the line, you're going to have historical lessons in the fine art world about like what was considered the art and the token, the image, and all these different aspects to it. And to each his own, right? Some people are going to gravitate towards more something that's specifically, I don't know, just art or paintings like you see with some of the artists that don't maybe even make NFTs. They just do crypto art, which was a lot of the artists back when I first started. It was not really many artists doing tokens. It was more just art about crypto. So which was great, and you'll see people that are kind of really love that, and then you'll see people that love the token and the image needs to be the same date that it happened, and if not, then I don't want it, which is fine, great. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. For me, I think that the token is important. Like I said, that's my temple. So for me, that's what I tell my collectors. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to buy it. You don't have to collect what you don't like, right? We all collect what we like. So
exactly, yeah, exactly. So as an OG artist and collector, is there any project or artist within the historical NFT space that you've collected some of their pieces, or maybe inspires you, or you think is very interesting or intriguing?
Yeah, I really kind of like the Saratobi. Yeah, the first like in-game assets is really, I think that's a cool quality for sure. And I like the test asset a lot. Obviously, the first counterparty asset without an image to start with, but doesn't need the image in my mind. So the token is great, and it's there and available. So I think that's really wonderful, and we're seeing these new utilities pop up around it that the community can come around and come together to build those utilities. You don't even need an artist or a developer, right? You have access to I don't know, VIP things with the test token, different elements like that that we'll see that will be developed around not only my project but others. It's exciting.
Right. Yeah. That's I know Test. I live out in Vegas. I know Test did like a Vegas party some point last year. I was gonna try to meet up with, although I don't have a Test. I was like, you're in my city. I need to come see you guys.
Behind the velvet rope and
have you dabbled at all with Emblem Vault, which is the new technology that allows you to bridge assets from other chains and kind of tokenize and sell it on Ethereum? Have you experimented with that at all, or do you think it's a good technology?
Yeah, so I like Emblem Vault. It's a way to bring your work into OpenSea, right? So I think I calculated or looked at the different visitors, and XChain gets like 50,000 visitors a month, whereas OpenSea is like 100 million. So like you're going to get a lot more eyeballs, although you'll get lost in the sea. So but I created an Emblem Vault of a few of my assets and moved them over just to see the process. You know, I love exploring. This is a new process. I'm going to try it out. So it's expensive to move the assets, one, and the biggest downfall, in my opinion, with Emblem Vault is that I can't put them within my own collection. If I upload it to Emblem Vault, it's in the Emblem Vault collection. Mm-hmm. If that were to change, I think that'd be kind of a game changer for project creators, especially that have the aspects that my work does, because then I could create it under an XCPinata collection for collectors to kind of see the stats and kind of work with it the same that they would other OpenSea collection. Otherwise, right now, I could put it all in the same wallet, but you wouldn't be able to see the stats. It'd be the Emblem Vault stats, which wouldn't be true to that specific project.
Right. I do. Yeah, I do believe that Emblem Vault is attempting to try to create their own marketplace. They have mentioned it a few times, so I think it's just a matter of when, if not if.
Right. Yeah, and we're still early. Like as late as this may seem to a lot of people, or even to myself from starting years ago, it's still at the forefront. I always say, like, I feel like I'm in the Middle Ages still. There's so much to be done, and we're still early, and you know, we're still using fiat. So
yeah, true. Like a true Bitcoiner, you are true Bitcoiner. Yeah. One final question before we get out of here. In terms of counterparty, there's not, as like you mentioned, there's not nearly as many eyeballs, 50,000 compared to tens or hundreds of millions of eyeballs that are on OpenSea per month. Is there anything that you think is holding the awareness or attention or even experimentation around counterparty assets? Is there anything that you'd like to see implemented to help onboard more users to Bitcoin assets?
Yeah, so there's really there's one thing that's holding it back mostly, and that's kind of it's not as user friendly, right? You have to upload your JSON file, upload your art to the decentralized storage system. So you kind of, there's a barrier with that knowledge, but that's great for artists that do know how to get over it, because it almost guarantees that your work's going to be seen. So it's a real kind of good place if you're a new artist starting out to kind of get that niche hold on your work and to kind of introduce it to people and know that people are going to see it. Whereas you'll get lost in the volume with OpenSea. And the biggest feature I think that would really kind of, I don't know, change the tide with counterparty in my mind would be some type of royalty feature for collectors or for sales, because that would enable me to sell the assets at a much lower starting point, because I believe in my work, I believe in my project, so I would make them very low, because then I know that they're just going to be continually sold and traded through time. So I would be able to get that compensation from the sales versus just having to sell at that one time.
Yeah,
so I think would be that's kind of my wish to have feature. I know I've talked to the developers at Counterparty about it, and probably going to put in what they call a CIP, Counterparty Improvement Protocol, same as like a BIP with the Bitcoin protocols.
Let's hope so, man. You guys definitely deserve it as the early pioneers, especially with Counterparty. We just need to bring more awareness. But I thank you for coming on and sharing this information. A lot of people have actually been really excited that I was talking with you to kind of share the story. And I really hope the bright future. I definitely need to buy some of these assets so that I get some of these airdrops. And hopefully you do one of these complete... I hope you do one of these complete auctions here in the near future so that I could sneakily come in and acquire all of them for myself.
For sure.
But
I appreciate it. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you too, brother. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you on Twitter. And I hope everyone goes and explores XCPinata, and everything that's on Bitcoin in the historical world. Thank you guys for watching, and those that are listening, we'll catch you next time.